How quickly have you seen a room full of happy people turn ugly and sour? Story 1. I was waiting for a flight in Newark when an airline employee came on the PA system at the gate next to mine and said, "Dear passengers, flight blank to blank has been delayed due to a pigeon entering the aircraft during the maintenance process." At first I thought, okay, a pigeon must have gotten sucked into the engine or something, which sounded pretty serious. But then the announcement took an unexpected turn. The pigeon entered the cabin through an open door while the aircraft was being cleaned. Our crew attempted to find it but could not. United Airlines was being outsmarted by the dumbest of birds. It was clear that this pigeon had the upper hand and the passengers weren't too impressed. "We don't expect your understanding, but your patience would be appreciated." That last line, man. You knew that guy making the announcement was at the end of his shift. Story 2. During bar trivia one night, the question was, what was the biggest fish in Finding Nemo? The answer given was blue whale. Now here's where things got interesting. Whales aren't fish, as most of us know, so naturally some folks started yelling at the guy who provided that answer, explaining that whales are mammals. But the guy's defense was that since it was in the water, it counted as a fish. To playfully push the point, I asked if the dentist in the movie was also a fish since he too was in the water. That particular Applebee narrowly avoided a riot that night. Bar trivia, it turns out, is no joking matter to some people. As if that wasn't enough, there was another question that rubbed me the wrong way. The trivia hosts asserted that Greenland was a country or nation. From the back corner, you could hear someone correcting them. "They're a self-governing principality of Denmark." I realized I must have been a little biased at first about what defines a country. It turns out that the most precise term for Greenland's status is that it's a constituent country within the Danish Commonwealth. So I owe that barkeep an apology for my initial assertion. But let me tell you, bar trivia is serious business. Regular teams even had plaques with their names on them hung on the wall. Story 3. My extended family had a fantastic day at the lake, filled with joy and laughter, but as the day drew to a close we started cleaning up, things took an unexpected turn. Half of a family had ventured out onto the lake and decided to play a prank on the rest of us who were preparing to leave. They sent a voicemail pretending that they were in distress, claiming that they were sinking and lacked life jackets. To make matters worse, there were kids on the boat who couldn't swim. My grandpa, being the caring patriarch he is, took the message seriously and panicked. He couldn't bear the thought of his family in danger, and when none of the nearby boat owners would lend him a life jacket to save his loved ones, he resorted to drastic measures. In a moment of desperation, he actually stole a boat and headed out to find them. Thankfully, he found a relative safe and sound, but what awaited them upon their return was far from the happiness we had enjoyed earlier in the day. A massive fistfight broke out, fueled by anger and frustration. As a result, some family members haven't spoken to each other in years. It's clear that while my grandpa's actions were driven by love and concern, the prank itself was inexcusable. I mean, who in their right mind thinks it's funny to tell someone their family's dying as a prank? This incident is a stark reminder that certain subjects are simply off limits when it comes to jokes. There's no humor to be found in situations like this. I share the sentiment that what happened that day was not a joke, but more like a social experiment gone horribly wrong. It's vital to recognize the line between harmless fun and harmless deception. When it's understandable that my grandpa was furious, I can't help but feel disappointed in the neighbors who initially refused to help. Growing up around lakes and boats, I've learned that when someone tells you they need to borrow your boat for a rescue mission, you don't hesitate. You get in your boat and go help, no questions asked. Story 4. We were at a birthday party celebrating one of our friends who happened to be a biker. His place was filled with a bunch of his fellow bikers, making it a lively gathering. However, things took a rather unpleasant turn due to the behavior of one of my husband's friends, who wasn't a biker that night. He had indulged in a bit too much alcohol and was becoming quite a nuisance by repeatedly violating me. I decided to assert myself and firmly told him to stop touching me, warning him that I wouldn't tolerate it any longer. Unfortunately, he didn't heed my warning, and as I walked by, he slapped my back forcefully. That was the last straw for me. Without thinking twice, I swiftly turned around and delivered a punch straight to his face. The narrow walkway made it difficult to avoid the wall, and his head collided with it. It turned out he had less than stellar dental health, so it didn't take much to cause the damage. The party atmosphere came to an abrupt halt as silence descended upon the room. I couldn't contain my anger and yelled at him, making it clear that his actions were completely unacceptable and that he should never touch me again. Meanwhile, my husband had been conveniently upstairs, completely unaware of the escalating situation as he was in the midst of a bathroom break. When he finally came downstairs, I wasted no time in informing him that we were leaving. The bikers at the party had had enough of this guy's behavior as well. They gathered around him and delivered a stern lecture about respecting other people's boundaries and not ruining a good time. What happened after that is a bit of a mystery to me, but we decided it was best to make our exit. As a consequence of his actions, no one in our group friends ever hung out with that guy again. Even his own brother, who was part of our circle, stopped inviting him to gatherings. It was a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated among our friends. Being both a party pooper and a all at once, that's like a double whammy of bad vibes, not just ruining one person's day but the whole party with your shenanigans. Not cool. So take a pass on copying this dude here because karma might just step in to teach you a lesson. Psst, guess what? This video is sponsored by none other than me and my awesome crew at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that truly capture who you are. Whether you're looking to turn one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for purely academic reasons, of course, or you're eager to transform your room with some epic anime-inspired designs, we can get it done for you. These are all handmade by me and the team from Canada. No dropshipping BS here. Real, handmade custom rugs by me and my friends. Click the first link in the description to learn more. Story 5. At my workplace, we often host weddings. And let me tell you about a particular incident from a few years back that left everyone in shock. It was a beautiful wedding day and the atmosphere was filled with joy and celebration. The guests were all having a great time. The happy couple was basking in their special day. Everything seemed perfect until things took an unexpected turn. The groom, of all people, was caught in a compromising situation with one of our waitresses. And where did this shocking discovery occur? None other than on the 9th green of the golf course. The maid of honor stumbled upon this shocking encounter, and the mood shifted a full 180 degrees from drunken jubilation to intense anger. The once happy families were now engaged in heated arguments. The bride was in tears, the mother of the bride was inconsolable, and the father of the bride was so furious that he had to be physically restrained. A reaction that was completely understandable given the circumstances. In a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation, we had no choice but to call the police. They swiftly arrived in the scene and, without hesitation, escorted the groom's family out of the venue. Some of the more astute members of the groom's family had already made their escape upon hearing about the unfolding chaos. All of this transpired in the span of just 1 hour, leaving everyone in the state of disbelief. The aftermath of this unforgettable incident, we came to refer to it simply as night pudding, a darkly humorous nod to the event that ruined that evening. Story 6. During a cruise we took nearly 2 months ago, my fiancé and I decided to attend one of the late-night comedy shows on board. Now these shows are decidedly for adults, with plenty of cursing and dirty talk thrown into the mix. The comedian on stage began riffing about how certain topics can really divide people, and he despised that aspect of society. One of the subjects he mentioned was politics, but then he clarified his stance, saying, "I will not be voting for Trump." Important note, this comedian was a middle-aged African-American man from the Bronx. The audience's response was mixed. Most people clapped and a few groaned, but for the most part, they let it slide, except for one woman. She muttered something just loud enough for the comedian to hear. "He has made your life so much better." The comedian abruptly halted the show, clearly taken aback. He confronted the woman, saying, "No, to hell with the show. What has Trump done for me?" She launched into a political debate with the comedian, and things started to get heated. Eventually, she stood up and the argument escalated. One man in the back chimed in with, "Irrelevant," to which she vehemently disagreed, arguing that this was anything but irrelevant. The comedian questioned her choice to bring politics into the mix, saying, "Why do you choose now to start your charity work? We're all here to laugh and have a good time." In response, she sarcastically retorted, "Yeah, and I'm just another white trash woman, aren't I? Aren't I?" The comedian, ever quick-witted, replied, "Well, ma'am, you said it, not me." And then shockingly, the woman dropped the N-word. In a matter of seconds, the crowd erupted in boos against her. It wasn't the staff who kicked her out of the room, it was the audience itself. I was genuinely concerned about what might happen next, considering someone dared to make such a remark. The comedian continued with the show, using this incident as an example of how politics can polarize people. It was a rather unexpected twist in an otherwise typical cruise ship comedy night. Dang. That argument sure escalated quickly. This is why they say politics at parties can be a real killjoy. Yeah, racism is never okay. Let's work on coming together instead of driving each other apart. There are so many real-world problems to tackle without creating unnecessary divisions. By the way, if you don't want anyone to turn your fun day sour, why not give us a like and subscribe to our channel? Let's keep those good vibes rolling. Story 7. One day at work, we had a 1-hour meeting scheduled, followed by a promised pizza party as a reward for achieving a safety goal. Throughout the week, they had been reassuring us not to worry about food because they had pizza covered, so after the meeting, we were all gathered, eagerly awaiting the arrival of our pizza. However, our boss walked in and delivered a bombshell. There had been a major communication breakdown, and it turned out that no one had actually ordered the pizza. If you want to witness the transformation of 50 factory workers from excited to seething with rage in less than a second, that's the news you share. Eventually, someone managed to arrange for pizza the following day. Story 8. Another unforgettable tale takes us to the elevator of Grand South at Northern Illinois University. This 12-story college dormitory was equipped with dreadfully slow elevators, testing the patience of its inhabitants. For those residing in the upper floors, the wait to reach the lobby for dinner could stretch to a grueling 20 to 30 minutes. The unspoken agreement among residents was simple. If you lived below the 5th floor, take the stairs and spare everyone the elevator ordeal. As the elevator stopped on each floor, the collective mood would lift, anticipating the grand arrival at the lobby. However, it appeared that the unspoken rule hadn't reached the deaf students residing on the 3rd floor. They boarded the elevator, unaware of the silent resentment brewing among the passengers. On one occasion, I overheard a guy at the back of the car whisper, "I guess the stairs must be broken." In a moment of candidness, I turned around and said in a normal voice, "Why are you whispering? They're deaf." And just like that, I could feel the waves of disapproval shifting toward me. People are weird. Story 9. I found myself at my younger cousin's birthday party, a joyous occasion filled with laughter and celebration. The topic of discussion had shifted to the impending arrival of my cousin's stepmother's baby, which naturally sparked excitement and chatter among the guests. It was during this conversation that my grandmother dropped a bombshell, predicting that in 8 to 10 years, we would all be gathered once again, this time to discuss my future as a parent. I mustered the courage to voice my truth. I didn't want children. In that instant, my grandmother's face contorted into a shocked expression, and a sudden hush fell over the room. I became the unexpected center of attention, and the collective gaze of my family made me feel as though I had committed some grave offense. The second incident ties back to the first. About 8 months later, my family and I visited my then 5-month-old cousin. As I held the baby, my aunt confidently declared that I would change my mind about having children. She handed me my adorable cousin, seemingly convinced that this interaction would somehow alter my perspective, but I remained resolute in my stance. I didn't want children. I explained that I wanted to enjoy my youth, free from the responsibilities of parenthood. Once again, my words elicited shock and disbelief from my family. And to add to the drama, my baby cousin began to cry. Despite this, the attempts to convince me to embrace my parenthood persisted. They bombarded me with pictures and videos of cute babies, but eventually, they realized that my decision was mine to make. The persuasion efforts came to an end. Story 10. The news hit us like a ton of bricks. It was during the year-end managers meeting, a time when we usually discussed bonuses, Christmas party plans, and all the festive activities. But this time, there was no reason to celebrate. They announced that our community bank was being acquired by Wells Fargo, and the harsh reality was that approximately 85% of our colleagues were about to lose their jobs. The mood in the room shifted dramatically. Bonuses were off the table, and the prospect of a Christmas party seemed like a distant memory. Instead, most of us were left with nothing but severance packages for the holidays. The atmosphere was somber, and the festive spirit we had anticipated had been replaced by uncertainty and anxiety. Man, that's like a bucket of cold water in your hopes and dreams. Losing your job at a party? It's a real downer for sure. Story 11. It was my brother's birthday party, and he had recently become engaged. During the celebration, my aunt, who was in the restroom, commented to another relative about my brother's choice of partner. She expressed regret that he hadn't found a nice policewoman. My brother is a policeman, and his now wife's dad had just completed a long prison sentence for being involved in a gang. She even implied that his future promotions might be affected by this. Unfortunately, her comments weren't as private as she had assumed. Her friends overheard the conversation, and it sparked a heated argument. Both families got involved, and it took a dozen off-duty policemen to separate everyone. In the end, my brother and his fiancée decided to get married in Las Vegas and didn't invite anyone from the feuding families. This incident serves as a reminder that family gatherings can sometimes take unexpected and contentious turns, leaving lasting rifts behind. Story 12. I was at a wedding once, and everything seemed to be going beautifully. The groom was giving a speech, and it looked like he was about to wrap it up. Throughout his speech, a massive screen displayed joyful pictures of the couple. The audience was full of smiles and laughter, enjoying the jokes and anecdotes. As he reached the conclusion, he said, "Most of all, thanks to my best man and my new beautiful wife for teaching me a life lesson." He glanced at his best man and winked, then turned to his wife with an awkward smile. At this point, everyone was on the edge of their seats, wondering what he was about to reveal. He continued, "Jen, you're a real beauty and the kindest person I know," with some more heartful words. But then he abruptly turned to his best man and said, "Congratulations, Dan, on scoring so big. See, Dan here has been sleeping with my wife for the past 6 months." He swiftly skipped to the next slide, revealing a video of Jen and Dan together in bed. With that, he literally dropped his microphone and walked away. I was left utterly flabbergasted, not knowing how to react. The situation was surreal and chaotic. Eventually, one of his friends came to pick him up, and he left with a beer in hand, leaving the guests in disbelief and shock. It was a wedding no one would forget anytime soon, but for all the wrong reasons. Story 13. During a wedding reception, the band leader decided to have some fun. He asked everyone to figure out which man at their table had the closest birthday. People thought it was a simple game, but then came a surprise. The band leader said each guy should give the flower centerpiece to the prettiest girl at their table. Most guys did just that, giving the centerpiece to their partners, but one tipsy guy at our table did something different. He gave it to another lady he thought was the prettiest. This caused a huge awkward moment. His wife got really mad and it looked like she might start a fight. The other ladies at the table were angry and the lady who got the flowers didn't know what to do. Her boyfriend wanted to fight the unwitting husband and the rest of us were in shock or nervously laughing. Word of the drama spread to nearby tables and people started whispering. The band played music, but the wife made a scene before storming out. The party was over. In the end, the guy was just following the band leader's instructions, but it caused a big mess. Story 14. I used to work for a company that manufactured closures, specifically lids for bottles and similar products. The most popular type of closure they produced was the volcano type, often used for squeezy sauce bottles. You know, the kind where you twist the outside to open it and squeeze the sauce from the pointy end onto your hot dog. By the way, the type that opens and closes like a sphincter, as seen on squeezy honey bottles, is humorously known as cat's bum closure. Now you're familiar with those bottles you get from the store, right? You have to unscrew the lid to remove the paper foil covering before putting the lid back on. Well, that piece of paper actually starts its life within the lid itself. It gets bonded to the plastic bottle through heat when the lid is initially screwed on. However, you have to use the right paper for each type of plastic bottle. Consequently, the rolls of paper in the factory were meticulously labeled except for one. One day, the factory ran out of the larger paper roll, so an employee picked up the unlabeled one. Thinking it looked identical and belonged in the same place, this roll was then placed into the machine and lids were manufactured, sent to Master Foods, assembled into thousands of tomato sauce bottles, and loaded onto trucks for distribution to supermarkets. As the trucks arrived at their destinations and bottles were being unpacked, some were found to be leaking significantly. It turned out that the culprit was the incorrect paper type used for these lids. Apologies were issued, trucks were cleaned, products were returned, and a significant recall process was initiated, along with liquidated damages. It costs a substantial amount of money. Back at the factory, corrective measures were taken, including meetings, revised processes, and retraining of employees. The unlabeled paper roll was promptly removed from the machine, and the correct one was inserted. Production resumed. However, a mere week later, the machine ran out of paper again. Another employee ventured into the storeroom and discovered the unlabeled paper roll back where it had initially been placed. Without realizing the history, this paper roll was once again installed into the machine. Predictably, the same issue occurred all over again, and as before, the problem wasn't noticed until the bottles reached the supermarkets. I had the dubious privilege of being present in the room, and the production manager, along with a few other key figures, received the news. The reaction was explosive. Amidst all the yelling, the production manager let out one of the loudest farts I had ever heard and stormed out of the room. This was a businessman in a sharp gray suit, and it was the first time I had heard anyone break wind at that company during my 6 months of employment there. Story 15. Yesterday evening, I was at a house party where the atmosphere was fantastic. Barbecue, beer, swimming, and everyone having a great time. As I prepared to join the pool, 2 girls from the Middle East started making fun of me due to some severe scar tissue around my left leg. They jokingly asked if a dog had caused the damage. In reality, the front of my shin, the side, and the back of my ankle were all scar tissue, with a few quite nasty scars on my thigh as well. I had to explain that during my time in the desert working in private security for a humanitarian organization that provided aid to children, a fellow team member accidentally stepped on an IED. I told them the story in detail. Everyone at the party just stared in silence for what felt like minutes. Finally, one of the guys commented, "That's some hero stuff right there." It was then that I had to tell them he didn't make it. He passed away right there, while I was desperately trying to protect him. The mood took a very dark turn, and I went to make it clear that I don't consider myself a hero. I worked for a private organization and witnessed some extremely grim situations. These are the kinds of things people hire professionals for because they don't want to get involved themselves. Yeah, I don't see myself as a good person. Hey there. If you've reached the end of this video, I'm sure you will also like, what was your "you messed with the wrong person" moment? Story 8 was awesome. See you there.